Good morning. It's a real pleasure to join you this morning and to help open what I'm hoping will be a really fun and meaningful day for you all. I am a big fan of this whole awakening, is the best way I can characterize it, of the importance of early learning in our education system. And it just became obvious at a very simple point that if we had to start off by saying, well, what the heck is all this systems thinking and why does it matter? Early learning is a perfect example. The very fact that as a society we're starting to appreciate the importance is a relatively more systemic perspective. The traditional view that kids come in our door at the age of 5 or 6 or whatever, and they go out our door at the age of 17 or 18, kind of an assembly line in between, is pretty non-systemic. You know, the systems thinking really starts with very simple questions. You know, I have a cup here. You know, where did it come from? Where does it go when we're done with it? Then I think about the material flow of this thing. Where does our energy come from? You know, we just ask simple questions about the reality we're dealing with that forces us to push a boundary back, a boundary in our thinking, as well as an institutional boundary. And no institution is in more need of that than the institution of public education. You know, what happens in the life of the child before they come into the schoolroom or the school in the morning? What happens to them when they leave at the end of the day? What's the life, the reality of that person, that young person in their community? Well, that expands the boundary of our thinking about education. But of course, a critical boundary that has needed for a long time to be expanded, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, is what's happened in the life of that child before they start in kindergarten or first grade. And we all know today, intuitively, I think, as human beings and as parents, we've known this for a very long time. But now in the last 20, 30 years, we have the research to show us that in the development of the brain and in all the social and emotional characteristics of life that characterized those first 5 years, you shape the mold that determines so much of what a child is capable of in their formal education. So the whole phenomenon of allocating real resources and starting to take more and more seriously the early learning process is itself a small step in thinking more systemically about education. The term systems thinking is an off-putting term. I mean, we're all stuck with it. We often wring our hands and go, gosh, I wish we had a better term. You know, someone years ago tried ecological thinking. That made everybody think, well, it was just about environmental systems. But you could really almost drop the system and say it's about thinking. It's about trying to understand the reality we're dealing with in a way that works better. And there's always many different aspects of the boundaries we're trying to push across. So I illustrated at the beginning here with the boundary of, well, it starts at the age of 5. No, it doesn't start at the age of 5. And for that matter, of course, it doesn't end at the age of 17 or 18. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't start when the child shows up at 8 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't end when the student leaves the school at 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So it's simply thinking about the reality we're dealing with in a more integrative fashion that allows us to get our arms around those aspects of the reality that really have an impact on what we can accomplish. Now, that's pretty abstract. Fortunately, and I'm really glad that the day is designed this way, after you've had to listen to me for a few minutes, you'll get to roll up your sleeves and just start doing it. And Tracy Benson and Sherry Marlin, who are here with you for this day, are real maestros, among the most experienced people in the country at helping educators, regardless of their position and regardless of where they sit in that larger educational continuum, helping educators really get good at using some of the tools. They will introduce you to what we call the habits of a systems thinker. and some of the basic tools that go with those habits. I often joke with them, and this is not unique to our field. It's taken 20 years to get it down to 13 habits. It takes a long time to get things really simple. So they're masterful at introducing the basics and getting people engaged. In a sense, they're master teachers, because all teaching is ultimately about learning, and learning happens through doing, not through listening. So much of today will be a workshop of sorts. You're going to be actually using some of the basic tools, the same tools that principals use, teachers use, and actually that students use. One of the beauties of this field is a lot of the same tools get used for everybody. And you can imagine in a school or a school-like environment when what the kids are doing and what the adults are doing at different stages, of course, at different levels of sophistication, of course, is really connected. You really can build a community of learners. I think this is even true with early learners. And I'm sure if you ask them, Tracy and Sherry can tell you some of the inspiring stories we've all seen of what young children, 3, 4, 5-year-old children, have shown us is possible when they really start to learn how to think in more integrative ways, when they're invited into a process of reflecting on their own experience and making sense of the interconnections they experience. Life is interconnection. A family is a system. A community is a system. As human beings, we grow up in systems. You can't not grow up in systems. Systems are not just a management artifact, like the school administrative system, which is, of course, the way we use it. Another reason the term is a little bit problematic. You say the word system, and people think of two things. Either they think computer system, like, oh, God, we need a systems expert here, or they think about administrative system, as in, well, hey, look, it ain't my fault. It's the stupid system. Neither of which is what we mean when we talk about systems thinking. We talk about tools and methods and ultimately skills for understanding interrelatedness, understanding the interconnections that actually shape our lives and shape what we can accomplish. There's another aspect that's relevant to your work right now. The good news is we are waking up, and we are starting to see the critical importance of early learning. The good news also has another side effect, though, which is that means there's a lot of different programs, a lot of different funding. You've got the Race to the Top money that's starting to move into early learning in California. You've got state funds, you've got state agencies, you've got community agencies. So you have a lot of different players and then a lot of boundaries that get developed. This often usually results in fragmentation. You got a program over here and a program over here. And you've got a funding stream over here, and you've got a different funding stream over here. And you've got different administrative units. It can also produce a lot of competition. Our program does this, your program does something else. Our program is obviously the one that really matters. I'm being a bit facetious here. But we know that the programmatization of efforts in truly complex settings often has its own problems. Fragmentation happens in every management system. The people who design the cars don't often talk to the people who build the cars. And by the way, none of them talk to the people who deal with the people who buy the cars in the showroom or servicing it. And so we've seen again and again that how to get everybody kind of on the same page. We are really in one fundamental system with one fundamental set of goals. So that's another reason in which the systems perspective and some of the tools you'll see today could really be helpful. But I would think that to the extent you're going to have different people in different programs, working through and coordinated by different agencies at different levels, using some of the same tools and methods, you start to produce coherence. We've seen this again and again in complex systems. Common tools, common methods, with a common set of ideas of what are the skills we're trying to build to be better thinkers for the benefit of our kids. To the extent there's commonality across those, you can communicate. You have a common language. Somebody who's working on a problem over here with one programmatic context can talk to somebody over here about, gee, you know, where was that statement on the ladder of inference? Or, hey, in the iceberg, are we dealing here at the event level, or are we dealing at a deeper system structure level? Are we dealing with a quick fix or a more fundamental solution? This becomes common linguistic terms, a common language that people in different parts of a very complex, interconnected undertaking can use to talk to each other, to help each other. One of the real indicators that you're making progress in this work is networks of collaboration start to build that cross the boundaries. Organizations, formal agencies, administrative units will always create boundaries. It's not good or bad. You've got to do that. You're managing something. You've got a budget, and you've got to have some accountability structure for dealing with what you're doing relative to that budget. You have different sources of funding. That creates different sorts of accountability to those different funders. Nothing wrong with all that. The question again is, how does it become coherent? One of the ways it becomes coherent, as I say, one of the ways you know you're making progress is you start to build networks of collaboration that cross the institutional boundaries. These sort of learning communities really are the human face of systems thinking. Learning communities that arise through people getting to know each other, to want to help each other. This is not complicated. The way networks of collaboration develop is people help each other. Who answers whose email? Who responds to a telephone call and says, hey, we got this problem. Is there anything you've encountered that's kind of like that? And before you know it, people are starting to help each other across all the institutional boundaries. So this is one of the goals of a little meeting like this. It's obviously just an introduction. But you'll have a day to work together. Many of you know each other already. Many of you don't know each other. You'll get to know people doing work like you do. And out of that, with some common tools, you start to find ways to help each other. So in a sense, the learning communities that arise, that cut across all the institutional boundaries, which are inescapable, are the real glue that can allow an effort like E4, that can allow an effort like the CSP program that many of you are part of here. I think maybe all of you are part of, to start to have a coherent ability to learn together. Learning is a really simple word, but it's always what it's all about. How do we continually enhance our capacities to produce the results we really want to produce in the day-to-day work environments where we have to produce those results? This requires a commitment, and ultimately it creates a culture of learning, where each and every professional, each and every person feels like a professional, is engaged in the continual building of their own capabilities, individually and collectively. You'll have a lot of fun today. I said that at the beginning. I'm kind of promising. Of course, it's easy for me to promise because I'm not there. But from everything I know about the plan and the people there, I think you're going to have a lot of fun. And I really hope this is a small step and a meaningful one in building learning communities that can allow your work to really flourish. Again, thank you for allowing me to join you in this mediated form. But I will be staying connected through Tracy, Sherry, and Ida Rose. Thank you.